On the old NBC Saturday Night Live programs, there used to be a young man who opened the comic news report segment with the line, "Good evening, I'm Chevy Chase, and you're not." Now, aside from being a humorous example of self-inflation, that dash of comedy also underscored a more serious point. He was in control, and you weren't. And that's very much the way it is in television for the most part. Try getting a story idea on a network news broadcast. Try getting your idea of a comedy show on one of the networks. Television is not a closed corporation, but it is anything but easily accessible. And that may be changing, particularly for those of you who live in areas served by cable television.
What public access means is that community organizations, alternative health groups, alternative art groups, independent political activists, people who may work on a variety of issues that have one thing in common, that they don't own the media and they don't have access to the traditional media, can all of a sudden have a forum in which they can express their views.
During the 1970s and 80s, Congress passed new laws to encourage development of the cable industry. Now, cities had the option to require that cable companies provide channels and production facilities for public access. Using these new laws, Chicago residents and community organizations helped shape and define a public access television agreement.
I was a part of the Citizens Committee on the Media, and I was a media maker with Cartemquin. We were doing documentaries. But one of the things the Citizens Committee on the Media was concerned about was just diversity in our field. We would look at the news broadcasters and they were all white and they were all men.
They would report mostly about what was happening on the north side.
But then we heard about access cable.
Mr. Stoney, you're the father of public access television. Why is it necessary?
I think that it's particularly important on a local level because, as you know, we're getting more and more kind of atomized. We stay in our apartments and we watch television, we don't go out. But when we make television about local affairs, we know who our neighbors are.
Access cable had already come to other cities in America that had cable franchises. What was happening was the cable companies were going to have a monopoly. The city would give them a franchise to dig up the neighborhood and connect, the cable, and there was no competition. There were no satellites. There was, cable was it. And one of the things that the cities could do is say, gee, we want some municipal channels, but the key thing to us here at Access Cable was we want some channels that are reserved for the public.
Citizens Committee on the Media was really thinking of an outlet for the community and how could we make it as good as possible for Chicago. So we actually wrote to other cities and had them send all their information, their bylaws, how they set up cable access. And I remember we'd get these big documents and we would sit there and read them.
What was happening in Chicago is the cable companies were bribing aldermen. Some of them got caught. There was one, I remember, Alderman Wagoda. He went to jail, served his time, and we still didn't have cable in Chicago.
The history of cable television in the United States was one of mostly corruption. And there was a time, even in the 70s, when Mayor Daley I considered doing cable, but then backed away because of the corruption.
But that gave us time in the community. We realized that this access cable could be a tremendous benefit to all kinds of people in the community, to churches, to not-for-profits, to unions, to people who participate in city government, to all kinds of people.
You see, Chicago has been fortunate to be late in this business. So you can
it's
learn.
Not a problem.
You can learn from all kinds of other places.
In the 80s, when Jane Byrne became mayor in that sort of freak election, there was no cable infrastructure, there was nothing, and I went to the mayor and some of her allies and said, if you want to do cable, do it the right way and don't get enmeshed in a corruption scandal. And so we created something called the Chicago Cable Television Commission, which I was the chair of, and we proposed a series of recommendations for the city. One of those recommendations involved public access. And another one of those recommendations involved funding from the cable companies for CAN TV. We would have these huge meetings. There would be 150 people at these meetings from churches and from unions and from all kinds of not-for-profit and community groups. And these were leadership people. These weren't like, these were all people who were like, yes, we could use this kind of communication with the larger community through something like cable access. And we said that this is in the public interest of the city of Chicago to have this. And huge fight with the cable companies about funding it. Huge. The chairman of the city council committee in charge of this was Alderman Verdoliak, appointed by Mayor Byrne.
It was Ed Verdoliak. He was not known to be a community-minded person. I remember him saying to me, "Who are you? Who do you represent?"
And he came to me a couple of times saying, so-and-so alderman wants this, and so-and-so doesn't want this. And there were a couple of contentious meetings, I would say.
And it was really funny to me because he thought he was like a gangster.
But the key to actually having leverage was that every ward, every place in the city, there were organizations that saw the potential of what access cable could mean to them. And so our coalition of these, at times 150 leaders of different groups, we always would have whatever alderman we were approaching, we had someone right from his ward, someone that he knew.
In the end, just like Mayor Byrne, they all backed off because they didn't want the taint of Chicago being like other cities with cable television having a bad name. And so we won everything. We won every single battle.
Beginnings are a way of life with an organization as young as Chicago Access Corporation. We began with the words in the Chicago Cable Ordinance. A nonprofit Chicago Access Corporation shall be created as hereinafter provided to promote and develop maximum community involvement in and use of cable television.
Hello, welcome to Chicago Access Network. This is one of the 6 community access television channels on your cable television system. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about what access is going to mean to you and to all of us here in Chicago.
My name is Margie Nicholson, and I was the Vice President Chief Operating Officer at CAN TV. I'd worked in cable for 5 or 6 years. I helped start the Madison Access Corporation. I was on the board of the National Federation of Local Cable Programmers. And I was working at a cable company in northern Indiana, and one day John McGuire, the cable administrator, called me and said, "Do you want to come and work for me at the Office of Cable Communications and be the coordinator for Chicago Access Corporation?"
Finding people who wanted to be a part of it, to run it, was really important. And getting people who were committed to the proposition of what public access or what CAN TV could do for the city of Chicago. There were 2 things. One, that it was good and it had to be professional. And Margie was part of that, and then Barbara took over, and Barbara was even more intense on that whole point.
We wanted to get up and going with programming as soon as possible. And so we put the word out to have a competition to ask people to send in their best videos. We said we're going to be launching our channel. We want to get videos. We don't have production facilities yet, but bring your material to us.
And we sent out an announcement that got a terrific response. We had over 300 programs submitted from all around the country.
We also made agreements and arrangements with the University of Illinois at Chicago, Wilbur Wright Junior College, and Columbia College, and they allowed us to use their studios for training.
One of the things that we had going for us from that early era is we had so many community partners that they were really the base of publicizing the thing. But we were also able to get things on actually, there would be things on the cable channel that would say, oh, find out about CAN-TV.
Hi, I'm Maria Gonzalez and I'm in the Pilsen community. I'm here to tell you a little bit about community television. It's a service that's offered with your cable subscription and it doesn't cost you anything extra. Basically, it's do-it-yourself television.
All it takes is for someone in your area, now possibly you, to contact the Access Corporation and become a volunteer producer. It's really not that hard at all. The Access Corporation provides the equipment and the training. You provide the event and the people to produce it.
The word gradually got out that there was this great resource, and all parts of Chicago, I mean, I really mean that, took advantage of it.
Hi, I'm Dan Schmidt. I do a motorcycle racing TV show, Team Chicago Challenge. I've been producing this show now for 38 years, but it's been Team Chicago Challenge motorcycle racing for 37.
Dan Schmidt is one of the great examples of getting hooked on community television through not a passion for television, but a passion for something else.
The first year that I started producing a show here at Chicago Access, I did a political show called The Other Side. I was promoting motorcycle ice racing starting in 1977. In 1983, we got the Amateur National Ice Race, motorcycle ice race, and we were going to put that race on at Lamb's Farm. So we show up for the race, and here's this guy, and he's got a regular camera, a regular TV camera. He was a public access producer in Highwood. So now I'm aware of public access television. So I decided I was going to do a show and I was going to interview Republican candidates. In the meantime, my good friend Bill Wilt, he got into public access television in the suburbs. So trying to get Republican candidates together, and it started to be almost a pain in the butt. So Bill Wilt said, why don't you just do motorcycle racing? You're still racing. So it became almost natural for me to change and go to motorcycle racing.
So that's the great thing too about CAN-TV. It's like, not everybody's here because they're enamored with television. They're here because they're enamored with something else, and they're trying to share it with the rest of Chicago.
Something is happening in this television studio, and it may be one of the best kept secrets in Chicago.
Yes, I can hear you. Quiet on the set.
It's the cable access show Hardcover, now in its 8th year. It's produced entirely by at-risk inner-city teenagers.
So our show is called Hardcover Voices and Visions of Chicago's Youth. And it's a show produced by high school students. There was a citywide teenage newspaper, and the lady that ran it was Ann Hines. It's called New Expression News. So I called Ann and I said, okay, cable is really coming. Let's, do a show together. So she already had these, news reporter kids, and I had production teams. So we did. We started in the summer of '86.
Hi, I'm Lisa Reuscher. And I'm Melanie Martin, and this is New Expression News. The Supreme Court ruling in the Frazier versus Bethel School District case allows school officials to legally punish students for socially unacceptable behavior.
Oh, wow. That was a really long time. At that point in time, I did a lot of support because my mother was at CAN-TV, and she was like, hey, here's what I want you to do. I want you to come and read this script for this intro, or this closing, or I want you to do a whole show. So of course, you're not going to tell your mother no, but it was also, a good opportunity, and it was also where I had an opportunity just to see exactly what I wanted to do post high school, and that's when I matriculated to Howard and decided that I was going to major in broadcast journalism. She said, oh, I must have been about 11, 12, 13, and I said, absolutely not, because I couldn't wear makeup at that time. So I had to have been at least around 17, 18, 19, somewhere between senior year of high school and freshman year of college, because I got to wear makeup.
Speaking of senior, now that I'm a senior, I don't quite remember everything that happened back then, but she's right.
JBTV's been a passion project of mine since 1983, 82, somewhere in there. I just started doing it as a joke.
And you've been involved with Access for a long time?
For about 6 years now, and I actually started out on Access doing my music video show, showing alternative music videos, and now we've grown and we're like all around the country now doing it. So it's called JBTV, Jerry Bryant Television.
I knew about CAN-TV because unlike other producers at CAN-TV, I was in a professional television production well before CAN-TV. And so I had all this equipment, and during the day, I would make money doing commercials. And then at night, I needed to have a hobby. And so when we did a TV commercial for like KLOS in Los Angeles or one of these different radio stations, literally I'd get a 1-inch reel of videotape. And on that tape would be Madonna, you know, Hello, Vogue, that we'd use in the commercial. But then there'd be Peter Murphy. And Peter Murphy had this great video, The Scarlet Thing in You. And I go, nobody's playing this. MTV was like, we're just playing these songs, you know, that's all we care about, are these songs, nothing else.
And we're proud to have you here as just before MTV. The first stop here is JBTV.
So I want to help the underdogs. I want to help the new artists out there. I want to help the artists that need promotion. Madonna, big artists and all those, they don't need the promotion, you know. But I take local bands at the time, Smashing Pumpkins, Local H. So many artists on JBTV had their first television appearance right here on CAN-TV.
Community residents have been instrumental in the development and growth of public access television in the city of Chicago. And it is community residents like you and your neighbors who bring CAN-TV to life.
When I started as an employee, I think it was more like 92, when CAN-TV was created and became available. Part of it, the reason why it even became available is because at the time, equipment for television production was so, one, huge, and two, expensive, and it definitely, you could not buy it off the shelf. I mean, it was a very closed environment, and public access came into being because of that, to let regular folks have access to this very expensive closed cable system. And every time there was a technology change at CAN-TV, it wasn't just staff having to retrain. It was always, we then had to retrain the customers depending on the size. So sometimes it was an easy transition to, oh, it's just a tape difference, you know? The tapes went from 3/4. We never quite did VHS, though that was in there. And then it went to mini DVs and DV cams, which were the professional ones, which were this big instead of this big. And then there was some toying around with DVDs. And then we started slowly transitioning to digital, and we're doing a combination for a while. Some of that was good. The tapes got cheaper. They got lighter, easier to carry. But digital was a really brand new way of thinking about doing television and nonlinear editing.
You're watching CAN-TV 36.
Channel 36. A religious and inspirational channel.
We got a lot of programming from churches and inspirational, and we decided, I believe, not we, but CAN-TV decided it would be great to put it all on one channel, so people looking for that type of programming could find it. And it's, you know, it's been the channel for a long time, and it's been always very full.
CAN-TV realized that there's a whole other community out there that could really benefit and utilize television. And that was the vast religious organizations in Chicago. From every kind of religion you could think of, they're all invited to CAN-TV. Once we started the channel and really specified this is for Chicago's religious and spiritual community, it quickly became our fastest growing channel. Even before digital, when we could technically go 24 hours a day, I could have easily filled that channel 24 hours a day. It was just the technology that was holding us back for many years. Alice Elsie has been a series producer for a very long time.
I was doing it at my church. We had a mock TV program, and I would invite guests and
host and interview them, and we had video camera to take the tape, yeah. And there were just things going on at the church. You know, the church is just so full of talent. Young people, that's where they learn how to sing and to present, to perform, you know, to present speeches, things like that. And I saw so much talent. I wanted to show the world.
One of the things that I remember the most is that she had her daughters involved with her and her work. And we've seen that a lot at CAN TV, where creating a program becomes a family affair. One of her probably the most famous guests she had on was then Senator Barack Obama and his wife, Michelle.
My daughters actually did the interviews, but I was working in the control room.
Well, let's ask the obvious question. What led you into politics?
Well, I was really inspired, I think, in both high school and college by the civil rights movement.
I used to work for Michelle Obama. She became an associate dean of students in 1996 at the University of Chicago, and I was working with that team. And she also created the first community service department there. And so we spent a lot of time together. Had lunch with her often, and we'd talk about family and marriage and things like that. And I just wanted for the Obamas to come on our show and talk about family and politics.
He used to actually, as a senator, he used to be at CAN TV all the time. He was bringing in nonprofit groups for our nonprofit services, for hotline shows. He was guesting on a lot of other people's shows. And as a community organizer, and then even through his campaign, we were running his campaign ads for senator. I just remember because people kind of had even the producers had this buzz about him.
With me tonight is a gentleman whom I've known for the last 5 years. I've known his wife, Michelle. I have
the political world in Chicago is very lively. But it's also bigger than most people realize than what the other networks show. I remember once I was giving a tour, it might have even been one of our open houses, but I was giving a tour, and I always tell people one of the things that CAN TV always does, frankly better than any of the other channels in Chicago, is be a space for the people running for office, even the people in office.
So do you view yourself as a good manager?
Well, the key is good management. I mean, that's what you need in government, because people pay, taxes. I don't.
What would happen if we let them talk for a half hour about what was happening in their ward? And what would happen if we let viewers, their constituents, call in and talk to them? And that's where Political Forum came from.
I think that really was why Political Forum was originally started, was you just wanted them to know what was going on here and how important it was. And when they could come and talk to their own constituents about what they were doing and then hear back from their constituents, and meanwhile meet some other people, see some other shows going, they realized what an important resource CAN TV was at that time.
It was a unique experience for the aldermen to have television time that, again, wasn't a soundbite, and in their world wasn't journalists trying to get at something. This was television that they could actually control the message and talk to their constituents, which didn't happen a lot. I mean, office hours, yes, they might have office hours 1 or 2 days a week. Not everybody in their ward can get there. They could see them on TV. They could answer some of the questions that their ward members had. It was a great success.
What are the common symptoms that show?
What about, kissing or something like that?
Why are women at such great?
One of the amazing things about CAN TV in the years that I've been here is that as an organization, we've taken our mission to heart as well in the things that we're producing. One of the key ones in the very beginning of my time at CAN TV was one that we called AIDS Call-In Live.
What are the first symptoms? I mean, if you look at a person, can you tell right away?
No. No, because a person may not have any symptoms at all. A person can have HIV.
CAN TV was basically sharing this airtime with organizations that were trying to deal with this new, now that we have the word pandemic, that was scary and nobody knew what to do with and was affecting a lot of people, but yet the media, and the general media, I should say, and even politicians were really skittish to talk about it or address the issue. So we created this show where organizations came on, shared the airtime, and gave out health information, legal information, sometimes just support information to people with AIDS, family members dealing with somebody with AIDS, at a time when nobody else would even talk about it.
We got involved with CAN TV back in 1999. And at that time, it was, probably, I want to say the height of the epidemic. There was a lot of, when we're talking about HIV, there was still a lot of lack of education. AIDS Call-In Live was because there was such a lack of knowledge. This gave people an opportunity to call in, get your questions answered. When we talk about CAN TV, and especially early on, we would do a show, and from that show, the next day, we would have people walking in, we would have people calling in. So many people were saying, I watched the show last night, and they would come in the next day to actually get HIV testing. So we did a lot of HIV testing.
We wanted to address with a doctor, with a specialist, people's angst and anxiety and feelings about what happened and how they're recovering and how they incorporate it in their life. Even in Chicago, people were scarred by this. And we were trying to use television to address a unique need in the community. We're funded through the cable companies. And when their contracts are up, at that point, it's kind of like shaking the hat with all the pieces and you have to pull out a little piece of paper and go, oh, well, this one. Basically, it's everybody's chance to renegotiate. It's business to them.
Well, Lobby Day was in April of 2007, and what actually was this is the time that AT&T had come to the state looking for a state franchise. Up to that, everything was done local. So all the cable companies would have to go to the city of Chicago to get a local franchise to work in the city of Chicago. AT&T decided they wanted to just do it for the whole state. They didn't want to have to go to each local city council to get approval. So then they came up with, I believe it was called HB 1500, which was some legislation that was trying to be passed downstate, which would actually hurt some of the public, would hurt public access.
We had a lobby day and we took a big bus full of community producers down to Springfield. And we were going from office to office. Everyone who came went to see their representative and make sure that they knew, hey, this is important to me. It was, I think for the producers, it was a fun and exciting day. And the one thing I heard from one of the representatives too, we're down here in Springfield, meaning versus Chicago, and not a lot of people come down to see us. So a lobby day like that was important. It made an impact on the legislation that was being written, or at least gave them pause to think about it, because there was people walking in their office going, you are my representative. And this, meaning CAN TV, is important to me.
She wants Channel Zero.
Cable access allowed a certain level of freedom for us where we could get away with using certain music or movie clips without worrying about cease and desist letters and all the stuff we had to go through nowadays. But yeah, if Channel 19 didn't exist, Channel Zero wouldn't be what it is, simply put. Channel Zero was a cinema verite hodgepodge documentary style cable access show that showcased local Chicago talent, whether it be music, nightlife, fashion, art, haircutting, because it all started for us in a barbershop when I met Cootie and Kanye's barber Ivan and I cut hair together. Cootie would always come in a barbershop with these stories about, oh man, I was hanging out at Michael Jordan's house, or but we're shooting b-ball with R. Kelly. He would come in with these fantastic stories that would entice and entertain, and I gravitated towards him and picked him to be the host of the show.
Channel 0, me and Titty Head chilling on the 6th tray, yo.
Hey, I campaign my committee at any city. Puts the sharp crease to your ends, beginnings, and midi. While you be bitchy, serve rhyme plenty. Minus civility, I come off like baby shitty.
It go arm, leg, arm, head. Niggas wanna get with this style, but your style is dead. Yo, I get the shit that'll bust your shit. Niggas wanna get with this, but you can't forget. I shake you with the ill short black, I come equipped.
Kanye was this young kid that liked to argue about hip hop in the barbershop, and then like a lot of times he would be freestyling over a beat he might make, and then later use that for a song. So he would want to see his footage and use it later to make a recording. So eventually, when he moved on with his production and raised his value in the production community, it naturally gravitated towards what he was doing and showed up with a camera to support. But it also serves, and especially Kanye's trajectory serves to show you that everything is attainable, dreams are attainable, and you gotta believe in yourself no matter what. Like Kanye's confidence was always there. He always believed in himself no matter what. And people telling him no, as you saw in the Genius documentary, only fueled his desire to prove them wrong. A lot of people are gonna tell you no, but you just need that one yes.
Came straight home from school one day with nothing to do, no games to play. I didn't want to phone my friends to talk, just seen those dudes on the last walk. Turned on the set, changed channels, couldn't find anything to ease my debt. Was about to ill when a voice said, chill. Thought to myself, yo, what's the deal? There was little bitty music notes coming out my set. Changed the channels and sounds, just then I stopped, my eyes popped. It was channel 19, yeah, that's the scene. Elmer and Company, Elmer, where? On channel 19, Elmer and Company, Elmer, where? On channel 19, Elmer and Company, Elmer, where? On channel 19.
I heard about Can TV through a friend of mine named Marshall Callum, and he was dancing on this program called Attack of the Boogie. So he invited me to come down to be a part of that show, and that's how it all began. Because the kids don't have a chance, they don't have the opportunity like they do like on these big shows, and they have kids coming in. So I said, well, this be the first show that's gonna bring the young crowd in, and it worked. It was a park district in the neighborhood, and I was telling them that I'm putting the show together and I need to get these kids transportation who don't have cars or how to get there. And they started sponsoring me buses to bring the kids in. Different housing projects. I be contacting friends, tell your friends, and it just started growing. Me, growing up in the projects too, you see a lot of things, kids shouldn't be seeing and stuff. And I try to keep them away from gangs, drugs, and so forth, to keep them on a positive road, And I had 2 kids too. They grew up on the show, and they grown, but they could say, Mama still showing them reruns and everything, but that's history. That's where it all came from, keeping the kids off the streets.
I live not far from the old TV station, and the building where I live, a multi-unit building, and one of my neighbors was always talking about where he would go and do these interviews with people, and he was really passionate about it. He didn't know that I had majored in radio and television production that was my college major. And so as I did share with him some of my training, he gave me an invitation to come down, and I sat in the back of the studio while this gentleman, who was already a producer at Can TV, interviewed the congressman for our area. So that is how I first heard about Can TV. Under my name, I have produced probably 2,000 shows. There are people who ask me to come and help them on their shows. If you add that number of shows that I've helped on, I think it jumps up to like 8,000 shows. Some other stations, you are departmentalized. Here, I've done camera, I've done audio, I've done graphics, I've done some script writing, I've done editing, I do editing. I mean, I think there's every position here at CAN TV or at a TV station that I have had a chance to perform.
From Chicago's CAN TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
Yes, I hosted Chicago Newsroom from its inception back in 2010 until about 2020, so about 10 years of it. In 2010, my wife and I had decided that journalism was in a state of flux unlike anything that we had seen in Chicago at that time. So we just decided to call a town hall. It was time for everybody to get together, and we rented a big room in the Allegro Hotel, and we just invited 100 or so journalists to come. We had a panel of 13, I think it was, and we just sat around and talked for a whole afternoon about what we thought was going on and where things were going. I got in touch with CAN TV back then to ask them if there was any chance that they would be able to come and record it. And they did more than that. They recorded it and put it on live, so we were really, really pleased about that. Greg Bozell, who was in charge of TV operations at that time, called me up after the town hall. We'd never met before, and he said, you know, we would really love to have a kind of a current event show on CAN TV. We don't have that right now. Would you be interested in coming, talking with us about trying to create something? I'd never given it a moment's thought before, but when we met and we talked, I thought, yeah, this could happen. We just had some amazing luck with getting people to come here to talk over the 10 years that the show was on the air. People like Kim Fox when she first got elected. Very controversial. We had a lot of things to talk to her about. Tony Preckwinkle was on the show, I think, something like 4 times. Several times when Tony Preckwinkle came here and sat at the table for an hour talking about issues in the county. And I think that that's a public service. I really do. I think that's something that you just can't find anywhere else.
We have a small residual power in our ordinance that gives us the ability to set some policies. That's never been fully actualized. It's never, frankly, been fully defined.
Lori Lightfoot came to our show 3, maybe 4 times to talk about the police accountability panel that she was running at the time. She became very comfortable being here, and when she got elected mayor, I asked her if she would do the show, and she said maybe she would, and I never heard from her again. And then I'm just kind of sitting eating lunch one day, and her press secretary calls, like on maybe the 2nd week that she was in office, and she said, the mayor wants you to come, bring your cameras to her office. And actually, we're one of the first outfits to hear her talk about her dissatisfaction with the police union and things that they were doing that she was very upset with. The thing that we had to offer was not the biggest audience that you're going to get on TV, but the opportunity to have what I would hope was an intelligent conversation about what the problems are that they're facing, what the problems are that they're trying to resolve, and where their struggles are. Does anybody have any idea how much money has been, I mean, you could say literally stolen from CPS in the last 20 years?
I haven't seen a figure for the last 20 years.
Yeah, I haven't seen either. I mean, what I've read is, 200 million or some such. I don't know.
And the credit entirely goes to the guests who came with a lot to say, and they said it. And the real moment was this facility that we're in here now.
We definitely outgrew our old space. And so we had been contemplating this move for a while.
There were all sorts of problems in that building, in that space, and I think if we could have moved earlier, we would have, but I don't think it was even possible.
When CAN TV first moved to Green Street, it was just us and nothing else. I mean, it was, post-factory place. It was pretty empty. But over the years, it definitely grew. and to the point where parking was impossible, and we had no parking lot because we were just tenants at the time.
The former board chair, John Cook, made an arrangement with the Illinois Medical District for a land lease, and during that time, while that was going through, the design team and the construction team was put together and assembled, and after 20 years from the start of design through occupancy, we were able to build this amazing facility.
I was tasked with the initial installation of all the broadcast gear, networking hardware, and design of the network that has evolved into what it is right now.
We conceptualized the building, again thinking about the train tracks, the external noise dampening and engineering that we had to do. There was a lot involved in a multitude of proposals until we arrived to the final design that the design team in CanTV moved forward with.
It was meant to be. It was one of those times where we had the right board members, the right nonprofit groups with us, and our constituent base, and the right staff to make it happen. Because it was, in terms of finding a property, planning a move, building a building, actually moving, and all that. For a little staff, we did that in an amazingly short time.
What CanTV asked for at the time was an accessible community space integrated into a state-of-the-art production studio. So as you can see, the site that we occupy is kind of off the beaten path, so to speak, in comparison to the Greektown location in terms of public access, transportation, etc. So this is a very dramatic site.
We were very lucky that we were able to get this done. We were able to get an extension on our lease for about 2 more months, but we didn't break ground till November 2014, and we were in moving September 2015.
We finished the construction on time and on budget. I felt, we achieved what we were set out to do.
We are essentially the cinematic content capital of the city of Chicago, with all of the new stuff that's happening in streaming and other services. People are looking to create content, and we, in this area that we're right here in, is the content capital, could be of America, because we have the largest film studios outside of California here. We've added a second studio in the ward in recent years. And again, you all are here. So this is a place where people can come and express themselves in a culturally, in a manner in which they can afford to do so. And we want to create those types of opportunities, because you may not be able to get on the sound stage with the big boys, but nonetheless, if you can start here, create the necessary content and learn, that doesn't mean that you can't then go and get a job in that industry, which again has been a boon for residents on the west side and for the city of Chicago itself.
So we're just, we're really pushing hard, and I think it's good, because that's what this place was designed for. It's designed to make everything possible.
The nonviolent resistance. And I was so deeply moved by the message that I went away and bought several books on the Gandhian technique.
Now with digital, we, several years ago now, we were able to actually go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the channels. Digital technology allowed us to do that. Everything was run by computers. I can trust the computer overnight. I don't need staff here. So it's been a wonderful thing for CanTV and for the viewers. Now they can see us all the time.
I'm Darius Hillman. Joining me on the next edition of In the
Darius's work is now helping us to get back a lot of what we lost. We're raising the profile of all the channels. You raise it, the old saying of the rising tide lifts all boats. So we're seeing that.
One of the technologies that we have, used within the last, month, is, and for critical service as well, not just for, hey, everybody's streaming, but we're actually using it to deliver our channels right now, is streaming technology, which was literally unheard of. In fact, I think I was one of the first people to say, we're not gonna be able to stream video over the internet. That's impossible. How are we gonna do that? I sit here corrected.
And all of that work has happened in the last year and a half as we've really started to ramp up. We've started to open up. We've started to have open houses. We've started to have town halls. We're hosting documentaries and the police partnerships with Relativity and Microsoft and all of these other organizations. So there's a lot going on right now.
It's interesting how people come around in your life in times when you really need it. You know, when CanTV's at a crossroads, it's sort of like a change. We've come out of, we're in the new facility for several years, but we had the COVID, the sort of break, you know, sort of broke up what was happening. You know, now you have to start over again. So right when Darius started, it was great. It was the perfect time to start building CanTV back up, getting everybody back in, producers, nonprofits, and just getting all the programming.
Hi, and welcome to Chicago Newsroom here on CanTV. I'm Ken Davis. Chicago Newsroom, we talk about journalism.
So what's going on? And what can these communities expect I have big shoes to fill in hosting Chicago Newsroom, now Chicago Newsroom 2.0, because Ken did such an amazing job for such a long period of time to revive or bring back. Chicago Newsroom was really important. I think it's an important show. I think, as I said, the opportunity, first of all, to hear a little bit more about our leaders in our community who are doing amazing things, which is one of our segments, and then to have journalists who are working, diverse journalists who are working on topics of real importance to communities of color in general, and Black community in particular, and to have them share their perspectives and what they're hearing is really powerful. And so to be able to do that and to have that kind of every week on, because you know there's lots of different topics that come up and we're talking about them, and so it was a privilege, and it's been a real honor to do it.
He had a debut of the shows, signature shows, and I came to that, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is really nice. I really liked the shows that I was able to, you know, see being taped. I really liked the staff and the people, and so I think it, you know, actually seeing other shows and how they produced them and did it actually opened up my eyes. And then I was like, you know what, I may be interested. I said may be interested. And he took that and he ran with it, and next thing you know, I had a show.
I'm Kimberly Loftus, a CPA and a financial executive, and I want you to know that you are not alone in your money journey. On my new show,
You could be doing 3 or 4 high-def shows distributed to the world simultaneously on a given day. So the potential, unlike the way it was before, where CanTV started with almost no potential, because it's like, you know, you're competing with 180 stations and the picture doesn't look that great, and it's all those stories we all know. This is the exact opposite. So the potential here is phenomenal, and I'm so glad to see really talented people coming in and taking the place to a new level. It's great. Congratulations.
I got to say though, the producers, the talent, everybody here at CanTV, your staff, your camera people, behind the scenes, everybody here is professional, and they're here for the right reason, to make quality television for the city of Chicago.
If you guys stick to what you say, free speech, there's no doubt about it. This may be the only place you could be on TV with free speech.
Well, congratulations, CanTV, 40 years, woo-woo. You're here, you're doing it.
I feel as long as you keep the same love, the same outreach to people, the staff is just wonderful. I think as long as you stay in that vein, you're going to become greater.
Happy 40th anniversary for CanTV.
CanTV will always be for the city of Chicago. It'll always be for every community within Chicago, every ethnic diverse, every group diverse, all of them, so that everyone always knows that they have a home at CanTV if they have something to say. So rather than me sitting here in this studio today, I'd like to see more of Chicago sitting in the studio tomorrow.
No matter what your age or what your background may be, this is a place where you know, you have the freedom to express creatively. And I think that's uniquely CanTV, and I hope that CanTV also continues to have that, to be able to create that environment for another 40 years.